Hey, it's Cat Lover, the girl obsessed with cats and spiderwebs. Let's jump right into our topic for today. Sonic 2 has always been a cult classic for old-head Sonic fans, and that's including yours truly. I can't tell you how many times I've played this game. Sometimes I've played the game even multiple times a day. I even have the game on multiple consoles, such as the PS2, DSi, 3DS, GameCube emulator, iOS, and Sega Genesis, so I guess you could say I'm a little in love with the game. With the game coming out in 1992, I wasn't even conceived yet to play the game when it originally came out, but I first played the game when I was about 5 years old, and it's one of the first non-arcade games I remember playing. Even so, have the levels stood successfully against the test of time, or are there some things that can be tweaked to make it better? Let's discuss. A lot of people call Emerald Hill Green Hill Zone 2.0, and to be honest, I can't blame them. This level is just as iconic and amazing, if not more so, than the most recycled Sonic level, as colorful, safe, and gives new players something to work with without feeling too difficult right out the gate. It does its job at being a good introductory level in the game, and because of how safe it is, you also get to learn more about the game's mechanics, including how goalposts transport you into special stages. Everything is well animated, bouncy, and filled to the brim with life, and the badniks, or whatever you want to call them, all feel like they're a real part of the environment, which feels a little creepy, despite how bright and happy everything seems. Even so, the level is absolutely beautiful, with greens, oranges, and blues mixing together with ease. It's a great first level, and unlike Sonic 1, the best is yet to come. Another super recycled Sonic level. Even then, I can respect why. The level's mechanical, cold look is boring and scary looking at first, but I personally don't think it's the most dangerous level by a long shot. It fits perfectly into the modern game's aesthetic and level designs, as even the enemies look less friendly, but it also works for Sonic 2. Onto the actual level though. Chemical Plant manages to combine high-speed fun and hazardous platforming pretty well. If you're skilled enough, you'll be able to breathe easy, but if you're new, well, I hope you like drowning a lot. With platforming in classic Sonic comes consequences when you screw up, and let's just say that messing up in this level's second act isn't something you want to do. Despite the fear players may feel, it's very satisfying to get past the platforming sections of the level and progress, and while it's kind of annoying, I like that the game gives you a bit of challenge. I wouldn't say it's a difficulty spike, but with how easy Casino Night and Hilltop are in comparison to this, it might have been better to put this level a little further into the game, but I digress. It's still a very solid level, and one I love trying to speed through. Any water level usually earns an eyebrow raise or groan from me. Aquatic Ruin is actually pretty good. This time, the game gives you an option to trudge through the waters or venture onto the higher paths to avoid the water sections altogether. It all depends on how good you are at getting there. Of course, there are hazards to being underwater for too long, as the bubble shield didn't exist yet, but I find it a lot less egregious and frustrating than Labyrinth Zone, as there are air bubbles everywhere and lots of fresh air, as well as plenty of ways to explore. It actually feels quite fast-paced if you're avoiding the water too, and the choice to either speed through the zone or explore to your heart's content was a great idea. I also think the level looks great. The underwater sections look realistic, and there are plenty of hazards hidden in the environment, such as shooting arrows and enemies busting through walls. The level, in my opinion, could be a bit longer, as even when I choose to stay out of the water, I want more to experience and see as I'm going fast, but it seems great the way it is. Casinos are a gimmick many Sonic games love to play with, but this one is by far my favorite in the series. Casino Night not only looks great, with the dark night sky and bright colorful slot machines that make you want to gamble your life savings away, but also not many hazards. I like to call this level the playground of Sonic 2, as the most danger and is getting crushed by some moving blocks. There is one enemy in this level, but it doesn't pose much threat at all. In this level, there are slots that you can play with, and depending on what you get, you'll either lose rings or earn them. The level doesn't have many sections where you can go fast, but I like just bouncing around and going as fast or as slow as I want. There's no risk to just going at your own pace and having fun, being in the moment at all. The level also includes my favorite boss fight from this game, so it's really got it all for me. The only thing I wish the level had more of was for me to worry about. The level is great for relaxation, but it just doesn't feel too satisfying to dash through the game without some danger or real obstacles meant to impede progress. I also think it'd be cool to see some other casino-themed badniks, maybe some playing chips or 8 balls, but like I said, favorite level and Sonic 2. I love you, Screeching Cat at the beginning of Hilltop Zone. Hilltop has always been a fun zone for me, as the levels are decently long and have hazards to worry about. The level itself is gorgeous, with trees and clouds passing by in the sky, and while the enemies are sort of generic and don't do too much, it's fine enough. The real hazards come from when you go underground, and come across large areas of rising lava and shifting grounds. There is some platforming that can seem tense, but it's pretty easy for seasoned or even new players of the game. Even so, I appreciate the hazards, as enemies shouldn't be the only thing making levels more difficult. Lava as a hazard is always some good fun, and I like the way it's utilized in the level, but sometimes it can feel like it's just kind of there, not doing too much. Hazards are one thing, but when you know you're safe and that's it, it feels kind of boring. The ground and lava shifting sequences also go on for far too long in my opinion, but that might just be because I'm impatient. Oh well. As a goth, I love spooky levels in all games, whether it be haunted mansions and graveyards, but here we just have an off-putting and funky cave. I love how the sickly purple jagged rocks stand out, and how amazingly the green vines managed to mesh with the cave walls. It looks creepy and almost Halloween-like. It's great. Mystic Cave is a level where we begin to see the difficulty of the game go up quite a bit. Not enough for it to be impossible, but it's quite noticeable. The level itself has many things to worry about, such as enemies popping out of cave walls, moving blocks that can crush you, and the infamous inescapable spike pit, unless you're playing Sonic Origins. That's not all your worries though, and that's what I love about this level. It might be annoying at times, as a certain Firefly enemy always gives me trouble, but I love the increase in difficulty. It can feel like you're speeding through the game a little too easily until you get here, and the game smacks you back into reality. Unfortunately, even with how much I love difficulty spikes, the original level of the game has a big elephant in the room, the pit I mentioned. Sure, it's not hard to avoid, but if you're going too fast, miss the switch, or are new to the game, it can feel like a giant screw you. But it holds up well, and the music kicks ass too. Oil Ocean is when things start to get a bit rocky, or should I say slippery. Oil Ocean isn't a bad zone at all, but I would say it could use a lot of tweaks to make it better. The zone involves the obvious, oil, and if you follow specific platforms you'll be thrown into oil and will have to trudge your way out. It's not hard, and I think the gimmicks around the level are cool, like the shooting tops and the little elevators that may or may not have an enemy waiting to attack someone nearby. Even then, I'd say that's all the level has to offer. It can feel boring, like a giant boulder in the way, and like nothing's really happening here. Sometimes backtracking is difficult too, as there are oil slides that make this basically impossible. The level design is lacking in some ways, with too many sections that don't matter or feel pointless, but again, not a bad zone, at least not in comparison to what we'll have to deal with next. I'm your number one hater. Tropolis Zone is infamous for being the hardest and most hated zone in Sonic 2, but this time, the difficulty spike is unwarranted and unwelcome. The level wants you to remember that even though Sonic 2 is better than Sonic 1, it's still a successor and therefore needed to include at least one level that absolutely ate away at your sanity and patience. The level has it all. From annoying enemies you either can't react to or can't hit without taking a hit, sometimes confusing level design, and lots of area to cover. Not to mention 3 acts instead of the 2 that we've seen in every other level so far. It's long, treacherous, and takes forever to get to the end. Let me also say that Metropolis loves to make you travel up screws, which may take a while, and as you get to the top, there could be a slicer waiting up there ready to send you all the way back down, even if you're a seasoned player. The enemies spawn in the worst places, with shellcrackers spawning underneath low ceilings, stars spawning in the walls next to moving platforms, and slicers spawning above something you needed to climb. It's insanely annoying and is a far cry from how the game was very recently. You'll see how much I was struggling to play on touchscreen and how fed up I was since I hadn't played this port of the game in a long time. What I can admit is that the platforming above lava and jumping on blocks with spiked arrows is pretty fun, and I like how the level looks. The gears churning in the back and how machine-like the entire level looked is great, and it can be fun if you know the game like the back of your hand. Otherwise, the most hated level for a reason. Sky Chase is a level some people don't like, and honestly I understand. It's hardly a bad level, but because it's only one act, it's fairly short and doesn't have much time to make an impression. The level is also played on a plane above certain death, and is a side-scrolling level. In my opinion, it feels like there's an unwritten rule in Sonic games for the game to actually be about going at your own pace, but this level makes that basically impossible. You go at the level's pace, and it's so slow. There's not much danger either, unless you get really unlucky with spin dashing off the plane, but I do understand that this level is more to move the story along, as it's the only act that directly transitions into another, so I'll give it a pass. The level isn't terrible, as I like the background despite how basic it is, and it's honestly a breath of fresh air after what was Metropolis, so that's a plus. Also, the tiny turtle enemies are so adorable. Wing Fortress is a lot more intense than Lullaby Sky Chase. Again, you're above certain death, but this time you're not in a plane. You're on a giant fortress above instantaneous death at all times, and there are moments where you have to platform, sometimes quickly above said death. It can be tense as hell, always second guessing your skill as a player, but this is a level where you can actually take your time most of the time, and judge your jumps. I'm genuinely surprised I didn't die in this level with how crappy my handle of the controls were on touchscreen. Again, the level is only one act, but a somewhat difficult section stands out to me. I wish there was more to offer on this level, but as it stands I quite like it. Death Egg Zone is infamous for being extremely hard, and that's because it is. You start off with no rings and a lot of things that can kill you. Super Sonic is hard enough to fight without getting hit, and judging by how you don't have any rings, this will be an intense fight where any mistake is fatal. It's hard, scary, and kind of frustrating, but if you get the phases down and take appropriate risks, this fight is doable. Now, this fight alone would be enough, maybe even too much for some players including a 5-year-old me, but there's another fight after this, against the Death Egg robot. The fight is slower, and there's more space to move around, but getting here and staying alive isn't an easy feat. Again, knowing the phases helps a lot, but what are the chances you will if it's your first time getting here? These two fights really do bring out the best of players, whether naturally or by force, and I love how difficult they are. The whole game, Eggman is getting his ass beat by a tiny blue hedgehog, but this time he has the upper hand and it shows. Even then, that's the reason why this fight can be critiqued. The difficulty spike in terms of boss fights is pretty unexpected, it can feel even unfair. I also think the no ring thing is a bit much, but like I said, I like the edge and intensity it gives the fight. Escaping an exploding death egg after reigning victorious is an amazing feeling, and not many games have made me feel as satisfied since. Sonic 2 has stood solid for a few decades now, and while there are some imperfections in the game, it's still a beautiful work of art that paved the way for future Sonic titles. What do you think? Are there any levels that made you feel differently than I did? I'd love to hear your feedback. I'm Cat Lover, it's been real, peace!